Okay, so this is going to be a video, it's kind of a process video. I bought these miniatures and I really wanted to make them my own, so I've stripped them. I'm going to go through the process of how I paint them. The one on the left has been stripped, the one on the right has not. And these are good miniatures. I like them. I think that they were pretty well painted, but they don't really match my particular style. They don't look like they're mine, they look like they're purchased, and that's fine. The lines are thick, the highlights are very intense, and just there's certain things that I just don't like about it. So I'm going to strip this down and redo it. Now, the way that I do it is really powerful. It involves super solvent and a simple, just plain paintbrush, and it takes seconds to strip away. Just watch this. A little bit of solvent there, rub, 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 rub. And then boom, the paint's gone. It's sped up here a little bit, but that's okay. This is really fast stuff. So we're gonna go ahead and just strip the model. A couple things that I think are worth keeping in mind here are that you really want to change out your solvent often, because it gets muddy, and at that point, once the solvent is muddy, you're really just pushing broken up pigment around the model, and it leaves something akin to a wash all over it. So every now and again, it's a good idea just to go ahead and strip it out. It's safe to pour it directly on the model. I think that this works so well as a stripper because it's really potent, and it works so fast you don't have to keep it on there. I want to point out that this actually works for fine cast, it works for plastic, and it works for pewter. The effects are all the same, so I mean it's really quite fast. When you do clean out your little cup of solvent, it's a really good idea not just to dump it out, but to actually like scrub it out, because again, those paint particles are really sticky. You'll see me here in a second. I'll just empty it right out, grab a little Q-tip and just clean it out. You don't have to do this every single time you do it, but it does make a difference, and you can use the excess to just clean some excess paint off of your mat or whatever. So here again in a second, you're going to kind of see what it's like when you don't clean out your pot. I let it run a little long here, and it's black, it's hard to work with. One thing that I do is, as I'm going, I'll actually wipe my brush on like a paper towel or something like that. Again, this is just a regular soft synthetic painting brush. Works super well, but you'll see me kind of jumping my hand off camera there. And what I'm doing is wiping it on the paper towel just to clean it off. And that's just me literally cleaning the pigment off the surface and not just putting it back in the paint. I do want to talk about the cost of this stripper. It's like an 8-ounce bottle, and it's like, I've seen it everywhere from about $8 up to like 20, depending on where you get it. Wherever I go, if I see it, I buy up their entire stock, because this stuff is so incredibly useful for stripping miniatures. This isn't just for stripping the entire model. You can see that this is very localized. I'm going section by section on this. It's not like I had to dunk it and soak it. I can be really precise. There was a Armiger Helvren that I was working on. I couldn't get the top hatch right. What I ended up doing was isolating the top hatch, just that tiny little porthole where you can see out of it. And I would just take a Q-tip and just wipe away the paint. It would take me a couple seconds, and then I would just repaint it. Didn't like it, stripped it, repainted again. So I mean, it's really an eraser for paint, and that's like why it's super valuable. That's why I'm showing you this process, because I really want it to sink in. People use, what is it? Mentholated spirits. They use alcohol, they use all sorts of stuff that's really harsh. This works so fast. I do not for the life of me know why this is not a more popular method. Here I'm just cleaning out the brush. Every now and again you do need to clean out the brush because it picks up particles. I mean, like, all the paint comes off, all of it. So, you know, even the brush needs to get cleaned out because it just pulls the paint right off. I think it's also worth pointing out, the only time I've ever had this solvent fail to take off paint is if it had been previously stripped with something else that didn't work as well. So for instance, if I were to dunk these models in green stuff, or not green stuff, that was simple green? Yeah, simple green. If the simple green didn't get it off, then it's pretty much baked on there. When that happens, I just end up chucking the model away because I know there's nothing I can do for it. There's the finished model. It's not quite as clean, I didn't spend as much time like buffing it out, but yeah, that's really fast. It took me maybe 30 minutes real time, tops, just to get the whole thing clean off. The next step in fixing up this model is removing the base. I like to do custom bases. I usually sculpt now with like a Milliput. I don't think I'm going to be showing this in this video, but I need to get this thing off, and it is scary as all get out to cut fine cast off of a base. The solvent works okay, but ultimately you gotta get in there with an X-Acto knife and just cut it. It's scary, super scary. Another thing I should point out is that solvent is not a glue. There's not a paint solvent. It's a super glue solvent. That's what it's for, and it works really well. It's just that's not what I use it for exclusively. So here I'm just using like a simple sculpting tool. It's got a nice thick wedge to it. It's not very sharp, and I just start working at those feet. I think I do damage the toe a little bit, but you know, now that I finished the model, I can't tell. So at this point, I'm just cleaning off the feet. I don't put this guy on a base to paint him. I usually hold him in my hand. In this video, I started using like a little sponge from a wargaming case, and that works pretty well for keeping it, you know, from getting scuffed up by its own painting process. So I've primed it black, and from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start working on those little Noctilith tiles, I think that the material is called. I'm just dry brushing it. This is a really light dry brush with a makeup brush. This is the first time using a makeup brush. I looked at my wife one night and I just said, honey, can I buy one of your makeup brushes? She just let me have it. That was really nice of her. But this works well. I like very often to even do a light dry brush on a lot of my miniatures. It just kind of gives me a sense of like where the raised edges are, you know, especially because like I want to point out this is my first Necron. I've painted a few like test pieces for other people, but this one's the first one that's mine. So I'm not really that familiar with Necrons, like painting them. I don't know them as intimately as I do, you know, Space Marines and things like that. So it's quite a bit. So just kind of going through, working on like where the raised edges are and just kind of getting a sense of the model. This is where I really start to learn about it. I'm going to end up using a lot of washes and shades to get the look that I want. It actually takes me a little while to get it, but I hit on this process a lot because I just started working with the contrast paints, and I realized that you can paint the ambient occlusion really easily early on. So I kind of go through and start adding highlights and things like that. Here I'm adding some Drakenhof Nightshade just to kind of begin the process of really pushing those highlights. So I really brightened it up. In some cases I got into recesses. Here I'm just kind of darkening it down, and I'm really giving it a blue, because when you look at it, you know, I'm going to be using blue and I'm going to be using yellow to shift this towards green. I do use a little bit of Games Workshop green glaze, I forget what it's called, but that helps out quite a bit. Here I'm taking care to really shape the wash as it lays on the actual model. I want it to be very particular to kind of have each little pooling of shade help show off that model, because it's going to be ultra thin, and that really this is the painting process. I'm not just slapping it on there, I'm shaping it as it begins to dry. Really before it dries, focusing on getting in on the recesses. And right now I'm actually pulling it away because I had so much wash on there. It started to like cake up in the crevices, and I didn't want that. I didn't think it looked good. So here, I'm just extracting that out and making sure that this stays nice and thin, because you don't want to gum this up. Having finished this model, I don't 100% like how I did this. I've got a couple other Necron guys that I'm going to be doing a little differently. I realized I went really dark on the blades, and I probably shouldn't have. I should have kept them really bright and light, but, it's fine. I mean, given what I've just been talking about that super solvent, I could always strip it and go back. But I don't want to, because, believe it or not, I don't care about this model. I got him because I love the body card character. I think that guy is just awesome looking. And you'll see me kind of working with him a little bit in the background, but I wanted this guy as like a test model, because he has a lot of the traits and materials that like most Necrons do. So I wanted to work on it. I've also been working on a good recipe for white. I'll be painting his body harness and his little robot loincloth, I guess, white. And that takes forever. But we'll get there. So here, just working my way around the body. The thing about washes is you have to let them dry, and it takes a while. I got like a fan running, that's why I don't have any like live audio, but it takes a long time. And so you end up just kind of like moving around and letting things dry and making sure you're setting it up the right way. Here I'm still not using those little foam pads, which eventually I will be, but yeah. Given that this is like my first major video talking about like an entire piece, here's why I'm making videos. I believe you learn a lot by watching yourself work. You go through and you get something done, and sometimes you don't even think while you're painting. And I mean, that has its pros and its cons, but one of the major cons is like you don't pay attention to what you're doing sometimes. You're just on autopilot. And being able to go back and look at your work, I think, informs your process a ton. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. And I don't know if anyone's going to ever watch this. So I don't really even care. I'm making this mainly for me. But if anybody is out here and they want to learn from this process, from my mistakes, then great. So mistake number one is I was not using foam pieces to protect my miniatures. Here I'm going through and just like highlighting edges. And I'm replacing what was the original green thick highlights with something very thin, very subtle, something that's going to get buried. I went and darkened down what I had done with the dry brushing, and now I'm just bringing it back up with just some white. I forget what the exact white is called, but it's a great white. I think it's one of the Vallejo game color whites. Yeah. Now, you can't see this so easily, but if you watch my left hand, I'm actually bracing it on the back of my thumb to steady my hand for this, because I'm getting up there in age and my hands shake a little bit, but this is all about like control, making sure this goes on nice and thin and subtle. It's all about brush tip control and just making sure my hands are as steady as they can be. So a lot of back and forth, and I go through and I literally do every single one of these Noctilith tiles, which, considering they're like Necron armor, I mean, it's kind of awesome. It's like an armored cloak. Now, if you look on the right side of that cloak versus the left side, like you can tell I'm really brightening it up. It may not look like a ton at first, but when you really compare it to what it was, you can see how I'm really pushing that brightness back up, because I want each and every one of these to be visible. I want you to be able to really see all that detail. And the only way to do that is to keep it, bright and keep it lively and add that contrast in there. Like Necron Stone, that Noctilith look, that unfortunately in Dawn of War 3 they didn't really do much with, but it's all about like dark flat surfaces, raised edges, and like raised bright edges are bright. I think that's really awesome. So here I think we've jumped ahead a little bit. I've started adding a little bit of yellow, a little bit of green to all these areas, and it's coming out as like a forest green, not really a ghostly green. It's very yellowy. I'm gonna fix that as we go, but I just wanted to show like this was an experiment, so like it wasn't a perfect process right away. It took some time to kind of get this recipe right. Again, this was my test Necron. I didn't have a huge plan going in for this. It was just like, okay, let's do Necrons. They're tiny. Hopefully we don't screw it up. Yeah, that's not bad. It's not bad. So here I've gone in and I've based it all white. The Robo loincloth and the shoulder and chest pieces, and here I'm just giving it like a heavy sepia tone wash. By the time I'm done with this video, I don't cover as much of it as I want. There's a few things that I'm gonna probably do yet, even now that I consider the model finished. But this is just like giving it a dusty look, because the current kind of feel that I'm going for is just like, they're very clean, but there are some dusty areas that they haven't been able to get clean yet, and they're not really worrying about because they're robots. They don't care. At least that's the thinking anyway. It's something I've done similar to my Tau. I know I've got some footage of that. Maybe I'll put some videos up for that. And it's this like kind of look I'm going for a couple of my armies. Now, I'm doing Kill Team with some friends, which means that I can buy like small sections of other armies. Way to get more money out of me, Games Workshop. But I kind of want them all to have this like unified theme, but still retain the qualities that make them what they are. And in this case, that kind of dusty, worn white and black, I think works. But the elements that make it a Necron are definitely still going to be there. Again, I went really heavy with this. Gosh, I'm looking at that now, and I just go, ouch. It was really heavy. I probably shouldn't have gone that heavy. I should have wiped most of that away. I think on my Tau I did, so that was a mistake. Yeah. But hey, like I said, here's an experiment. I paint thin enough I can put more coats of white on there. In fact, it takes me like 9 coats of white to get most of this down and away, but I regret nothing. So here I've went and undercoated with Vallejo Metallics silver, and now I'm just painting over it with gold. I think it's like actually a brass, but it goes on fairly translucent, and so that silver undercoat really helps it just like shine. I could just do it in one coat. I will eventually go over it with some Reikland Flesh Shade, I believe the gloss kind, because I feel like that helps make a nice, really clean gold. I later on decided not to paint this part gold, because I look at the art online and I realize, oh, that's supposed to be one of those little Noctilith tiles. So, my bad there. We fix it. Again, I paint really thin. No big deal. I have a Custodes army, and I paint that gold well. Now, a lot of people say, oh, gold's easy. I don't think so. I mean, you can slap some gold paint on there, highlight it silver. You can follow the Games Workshop way of doing things. Doesn't mean you do a good job. It is possible to make gold look ugly. I like very smooth, very saturated gold. Flawless highlights and a nice smooth transition between the gold and the silver parts. I usually take my base gold, mix it with some silver, and then dry brush that on, and then I'll highlight again with just like the plain silver, because that gives me a nice smooth gold transition. So gold actually takes me a while under most circumstances. I don't think I spend as much time on this as I would in Adeptus Custodes, but what do you do? Now as I paint the metallics for this guy in this video, a step that I didn't record was I eventually go over it with like a heavy Agrax Earth shade and a Athonian camo shade to kind of really grunge up the metal, because I want it to look old and beat up. I mean, you know, these new Necrons, they're new, not since like 5th or 6th edition, but you know, this newer, more fluffy Necrons, they're very shiny, and I get that, but they're millions of years old. A little bit of that dirt ain't coming off, so I pushed that in there. Here I'm kind of going over some areas that I messed up on. I didn't realize that they were gold at the time. Again, looking at the box art, fixing it up. Here, one of the many layers of white. White is a terrible color to work with because it's very gritty, because its particle size has to be larger because it's white. It doesn't cover very well. It goes on thick and then it thins down and becomes very translucent. It takes me forever to get this thing back into the range of really white, and even then not as neatly as I would want to be. Again, I'm gonna have to go back over this probably 2 or 3 more times. Even at the end of the video, when I show you just kind of a picture of what it's currently looking like on its awesome Necron base, even then, white is still hard. And you know, I know what you're saying, Apothecary white, it's garbage. I am totally unimpressed with it, because at the end of the day, it's not white at all. It's messy, it's ugly, and you end up having to dry brush white on top of it anyway, so what's the point? It's my least favorite of all of the contrast colors. Although I do like contrast colors. I'm using it quite a bit. I've got a War Boss. I'm probably just going to do like a showcase video, because I just hurried and painted the whole thing over 2 or 3 days. Totally worth it. So here I'm just doing some of that silver gold dry brushing. I decided not to do the straight silver because I just feel like it doesn't need it. A little too shiny. But really light, really easy. Nothing big. These are both Vallejo colors. I prefer Vallejo colors mainly for the droppers. Their paints are a little thinner, therefore easier to work with. I don't have to do as much to them. The Games Workshop contrast and shades are my go-to. I do not use Games Workshop dry brush colors. I think they're highway robbery. So at this point he's largely done. I'm just doing the silver. I'm going to be doing a wash. I'm doing touch-ups and cleanups. I usually clean up my models for about a week after I paint them. I'll take them like to work and look at them in real bright sunlight and just kind of make a list. And I usually find like 12 to 20 things. I gotta fix this, I gotta fix this. A little sloppy here, I want to enhance this. You know, tons of stuff. But it's largely done. So from here, we'll just kind of cut to the end. I hope you like what you see. If you like this video, I guess like and subscribe. If you want to see more like this, because I'm planning on doing it. So if you want to see it, it's going to be there. Other than that, this has been Synthetic Black, and I appreciate you watching.